Welcome in, everyone, to the First Call Podcast, Breeders' Cup Edition. Jeremy Plonk here from First Bet and Express Bet, joined by Scott Shapiro. Shap, we're going to shake things up this week.
I'm excited for this. We do plenty. We do what everybody, as we were talking about before, we literally kind of do what people do for most of their podcasts every week, previewing all the best races for the day, the best stakes races. Makes sense. We're going to switch it up, right? And draft. I don't know about everybody out there, but my assumption is that lots of people out there like us love the draft, whether it be for fantasy, whether it be for video games when we were younger. Any way we can get a draft involved with something adds to the fun. And I can see your smile is like mine. So it was your idea, but looking forward to this.
Drafts are fun, but we're talking long shot draft too. I mean, we're trying to make some dough here at the Breeders' Cup, and that's the thought. Scott and I are going to take horses in each race. We're going to put out a roster where we have at least one horse 8-1 or more in every one of the Breeders' Cup races. So if you're watching along and trying to figure out is Niso's going to win the Dirt Mile or is Explorer going to win the Juvenile Fillies at short prices, stick around. We're going to give you something a lot juicier than that. For those of you who are following our regular podcast, we sure appreciate it. Be sure to like and share this out. For those of you listening on our traditional audio channels, we'll run down some of the things that we're going to take part in here today as well. And also, I want to welcome those of you who are watching and listening through the first Breeders' Cup Wager Guide. Now online, free access. All the handicappers have now chimed in. Go to that at news.first.com and then click on the Wager Guide button and go into the Breeders' Cup Wager Guide. We've got handicapping for all 14 Breeders' Cup races, so plenty of action there to talk about. Scott and I are going to bypass Friday for this fantasy draft and for the long shot draft. We're going to go right into Saturday's races because of the 9 races in there. Scott, I would be remiss, though. Do you have any opinions on the Friday card that you want to throw out there to anybody as they handicap ahead looking towards the Future Stars program?
Yeah, the way I'm going to attack, there's a couple of ways I'm going to attack the card. I'm going to play a pick 4 or 5. Haven't decided yet with that, and play a couple exactas, maybe a lot, depending on how they go early with the exactathon promotion. And as I need to hit 6. But the main race I'm going to bet on the Breeders' Cup in race is the Juvenile Fillies. That's the one I'm most excited for. I think there's some vulnerable favorites. I know Explorer looks tough to some. To me, Percy's Bar is the one of the logicals that makes the most sense. And then I think Meaning and Super Corridoro, who normally I would probably think are moving a little bit up in class too much off a big maiden win. I think both of them are 2-turn horses for certain and aren't meeting the strongest group. So I'm going to try to mix those 3 in, hopefully get one of them to the wire first and have a good Friday that way before I can hopefully outdraft you here.
No strong opinions from yours truly on the Friday card, I'll be honest with you. And typically, maybe 10% of my budget goes to Friday when it comes to Breeders' Cup weekend. And that's when I have opinions on the Friday card. Slight lean to Intrepido for me in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but not a strong conviction in there, as I know Ted Nafi is going to be tough to beat. All right, let's talk about some horses that are going to beat these horses that are tough to beat, or at least spice up our exotics. It's the first ever draft of long shots for the Breeders' Cup here on the It's Official podcast. So, Scott Shapiro, I am going to start the clock, if you will. Here is the blank board. You get first draw in because I'm a kind host. You get first pick in this long shot draft. Who are we going with?
I think you just wanted second and third pick when you offered that up. But anyhow, I am going to go with the long shot I'm most excited for on Saturday. Maybe not one you're interested in. I'm not thinking strategy at this point. Maybe you're smarter than me. But I'm going to go with my pick in the Classic now with Sovereignty out. We are going to go with the one and only number 10 Antiquarian. 15-1 originally, down to 10-1 on David Aragona's new morning line without Sovereignty. And I'm questionable about how many horses in this field are coming into this race set for their best. And I really feel that Antiquarian has a good shot to be set for his best, and his last couple have been very good. I'd like the fact that he can be up close, but he also showed that he could settle off in a race where there's a rabbit like there's going to be in here. So I just think he's getting a little bit overlooked in here based on when I talk to people. Really? Antiquarian? And I don't think he's that much of an outsider. So we'll go with Antiquarian as my first pick.
That's a safe pick for you because there are 9 rounds in this draft. 18 long shots going to be selected, and he wouldn't have been one of mine. So you could have buried that pick down a ways. I think your general manager didn't read the draft room quite right on that one.
Mel Kiper chimes in. These guys don't know the draft.
All right, so I got picks 2 and 3 on the old wraparound format here. This is one filly I've been talking up a lot because when I watched her work, I was absolutely flabbergasted. Let's go to the filly and mare sprint for my first long shot pick, Splendora. She worked in 47 and change. I could have sworn she worked in 52. I was so baffled by the time that I rewound the tape on the TV in the living room and said, by God, she did go 47 and change. She's coming off a huge win in the Tranquility Lake last time. She cuts back in distance. She loves the track at Del Mar. She's going to be a good price. And of all the Bob Bafferts everybody's going to be talking about this weekend, I don't think Splendora is going to be one of them. She's going to be my number 1 pick here in the filly and mare sprint race. As we look at the field for the filly and mare sprint, of course, Copion coming out of this race and going in the sprint changes things up a bit for sure. Tamara still runs in here for Richard Bandella. As for the favorites in this race, you got to figure Sweet Azteca, who is also trading very well, will be tough. And here's the 2-1 morning line favorite. But the one thing about Sweet Azteca, if this race was 6 furlongs, I think she'd be 8-5 in here. 7 furlongs, Scott, I think she might be a touch vulnerable, but I think she's the fastest filly in this starting gate.
Without question. She's no doubt the one to beat in there. But like you said, the price and the fact that, is she going to have things totally her way with Hall and Ice right to her outside where they supplemented the in? I think, she's as vulnerable as you could be for a horse that's basically won almost every start this year other than the every recent start. Sorry, the last couple of years. She's a serious mare that I saw debut at Churchill way back in May of 2023. Had some issues, but we're going to try to beat her because I just think that she's one of the ones you probably want to try to take a chance against with the additional furlong in the likely race shape.
All right, so we get to another long shot pick here. I get to double back, and as we go to the third pick in the long shot draft here on Breeders' Cup Saturday, I'm going to the Distaff with Regaled. I do not think she's going to win the race, but I think there is a ton of pace in this year's Breeders' Cup Distaff. Seismic Beauty, the favorite in the Distaff. To me, I don't like her going 1 1/8 after watching her finish at 1 16. I think somebody is going to just kind of come from the back of the pack at a big price and be a big exotics blow up here. For me, that is Regaled coming off the effort last time out in the Delaware Handicap. Scott, I know talking a little bit with you throughout the week, you got a little love for this filly too in the Distaff.
I do. I think that this Distaff is lacking the star power that it might look like. There you see the field. You've got the obvious favorite and deserving in Seismic Beauty, but she's the only one bringing in a real massive resume. If she has one, I'm questionable. And the way you're probably going to beat her is if she goes too fast or if they put some pressure on her. Wade Beckman is a very capable trainer, and this filly is going, or is it a mare Regaled? I don't have, let's see. Yeah. Mare. She, just is continuing to get better and better. Whether she's good enough for this to hit the board, I don't know, but I think she's just going to angle over and make one big run and try to pick up as many pieces as possible.
Bit of news today on Thursday as we record this podcast, Scottish Lassie has scratched. The 5 Scottish Lassie will come out of the Breeders' Cup. Distaff news today from Dave Grenning with Daily Racing Form. So expect this field now at 12. And if you like the horses towards the outside, like Darth Vader and Regaled, they get in a little bit closer in that run to the first turn at 1 1/8. I've got Darth Vader on top, but I think Regaled in the second and third spots, a very juicy way to attack the trifectas. Darth Vader, Regaled, all Darth Vader, all Regaled, and you might even get a little bit of win cash on Regaled in that particular spot if you think 30-1 is just too much to pass up. But I think she's a great exotics play to use underneath. So let's turn it over to you now as we hit your second pick here.
Yeah, you took my top pick in there. I'm going to end up so that's a tough one for me. So cross that off. I am going to go with a horse that I think is 8-1 on the line and, a good cutoff point for me because I didn't have much creativity outside of Goliath, who I hope runs like Goliath in this year's Turf, Breeders' Cup Turf, coming in from Germany. To me, I think this is Mini Hawk's race to lose, like many overseas. I know she's 8-5 here on David Aragona's morning line. I looked this morning on Odds Checker. I think she's down to even money overseas. I think she's the filly to beat. Someone I trust very much, thinks very highly of her ability to take to the U.S. style of racing, which is obviously very key. Rebels Romance would be the one I'm going would fade, but the other one I give a chance to is number 2 Goliath, who comes in the best form of his career. You want to save ground at all possible costs here at Del Mar and come with that big run, because when they turn for home, it is going to play off, and if you can work out a good trip like a European turf course, the pace is honest, which it should be in here. So we'll try number 2 Goliath at 8-1, barely sneaking by to get in the draft.
All right, big field in the Breeders' Cup Turf. And again, Mini Hawk coming out of that Arc de Triomphe. The Arc runners did very well in the Breeders' Cup for many decades, but in recent years, it's been rather dry with some of those alumni. So, just like it is in the U.S., running back on short rest, maybe not what it always was. And the Europeans certainly do it more often and with more success than the American horses do. But those Arc runners haven't been the same in the turf in recent years as they were, say, a decade or so back. So Scott's pick there is Goliath. You get 2 in a row, so you're next up.
All right, I'm going to move to a race that's one of my favorite, if not the favorite race, and to bet on the card other than maybe the Classic, but that is the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Talked about it multiple times on the Wager Guide. Hopefully you got to check that out. If you saw the Wager Guide, you know that this horse is not my pick, but Lovesick Blues is my pick here. Not my pick in the race, much like Jeremy with Regaled. But I think this horse is going to get overlooked, and I'm very top-heavy in here. I think Imagination at 6-1 and Ben Tornado at 5-2 are the top 2 in here. I'm very confident in both of them running well. So I'm looking for underneath types. Lovesick Blues, I mean, everybody, he shocked us in the Bing Crosby at 18-1, mainly because he'd been on the dirt so often and hadn't competed at that level. But he might just be better, despite being a 7-year-old that's done some of his best running on the turf on the dirt. I don't want to toss him out just because that Bing Crosby was a lesser field than here. I think Lovesick Blues can fire right back despite not winning in the California Flag, which was the prep. So we'll take him at 10-1 and it's our second pick.
All right, Scott going with Lovesick Blues in there. I've got 2 in a row coming back to back. And this next pick for me, Scott's not going to be a horse I think can win. I think somebody with some speed to them will win the dirt mile. But boy, the gassers and the chasers are really going to be emptied out of this particular race.
Oh, no.
You see where I'm going here, right? Chancer McPatrick in the dirt mile should be able to close and get a little bit of this. And I hope that I'm right on this. He's 15-1 in the morning line. I don't think he can win. But his actual brisk late pace figures are better than you'd expect for a horse who just never seems to quite get there in the big races. He's put up some pretty good numbers, and there is a lot of pace in the dirt mile. I hate to be the bearer of bad news for you, not being able to get your boy here, Chancer McPatrick. But in the dirt mile, let's take a look at the field here and just talk about how this race might end up setting up in here, because the horses with speed in here include Nisos, Full Serrano, Citizen Bull right next to each other are going to go barreling out of there. We don't know what we're going to get out of the Uruguayan horse, Touch of Destiny. I almost considered Touch of Destiny the long shot pick in this race, but I didn't want any projects. I didn't want to pick any horses from Uruguay and have to wait a couple years for them to develop in my draft. So I ended up going with the horse who I think can close and go by some of the tired horses in here, Chancer McPatrick, at a price 3rd or 4th. I don't see him in the exacta.
Well, I was more ambitious and made him my top pick after probably thinking one of the most overbet horses throughout his career thus far after those first few wins to kick off his career. I just think this race could fall apart, and you want it to fall apart if you're looking for value, because you look, Citizen Bull will be a good price probably. He has to go, right? Unless one of the other Baffords is purely intended to go. All of them have some sort of speed.
Right.
Either Full Serrano and Goal Oriented to me have to go. And so does where am I missing the other speed horse?
It could be White Abario. He's usually a stalker, but he's breathing fire in the morning, working way too fast. I think he might be geeked up.
Well, yeah, so really it's Full Serrano and one of the Baffords at the very minimum is really when there's I feel like when there's only 2 speeds, you really never know what can happen. It doesn't feel like one of those races unless somehow Full Serrano does not break. But White Abario is interesting. He might have to be my I might have to consider him now a little later in the draft, now that I got to cross off a horse that I never thought that I would like. But just goes to show, probably not, that you don't want to be overly biased against horses you don't like when they're short prices when they become bigger ones.
Remember, we've got to pick horses 8-1 or more, and we've got to have one in each division here. So I actually think the Dirt Mile is going to be a pretty fundamentally strong race. I mean, I think it runs through Nisos and Full Serrano. But again, for somebody closing in there and getting on the bottom of your tickets, if you've got chalk near the top, you're going to need some prices underneath. So Dirt Mile there is going to be my pick in there in the draft. Now, next up for the draft, I was torn. I'm still torn. This is an either-or race for me. We talked about it on your podcast with Bailey yesterday on Horse Sense. The Breeders' Cup Mile. I love 2 20-1 shots. The format of this draft will not allow me to pick both of them. We're only allowed one in each race. So I'm going to take the speed of the two. A Keyrat in the Breeders' Cup Mile is going to be my next choice up here in the draft. I believe, what is this going to be? 2, 4, 6. This is pick number 8, I believe. So we'll reveal there with Keyrat. Oh, no, I gave you an early pick here. Let's go back here. Keyrat's going to be the pick here. Pick 7 in the draft. I'm kind of letting the cat out of the bag on who you're taking next. I've got Keyrat in here, 20-1 in the morning line. The other one here that I really like is Argine. There is very little early speed at all in the Breeders' Cup Mile. The domestic horses really don't have anybody who look like they want the lead. Keyrat is a former rabbit in Europe who's sent here as the main player and no longer the bit player. I think from the outside, Ross Ryan's going to try to bust out of there. We're going to know really early if the horse breaks and gets out there, we're in decent shape. If he doesn't, he gets hung wide on the first turn and all bets are off. But breaking from the outside gets to walk into the starting gate last like that. I think it's an interesting proposition where Keyrat, a horse who might be able to wire. Argine will be coming late, has a good turn of foot from Japan. There's a lot to like about this Japanese mare in this particular spot. And we found out yesterday it will be the final ride here in North America for Frankie Dettori. This is his last Breeders' Cup mount in the Breeders' Cup Mile. Maybe Frankie goes out with a flying dismount, Scott.
Wow, that would be something. I mean, they often talk about how those are layovers at times for the guys that I don't think they perform layovers though in $2-3 million type races. So that'd be good. I'd be good for you. And I have not decided what I'm going to do tactically from a wagering perspective in that race. She isn't an A for me taking on the boys, but man, you made a pretty good case multiple times for this mare. Well, the cat's out of the bag, but I want to explain myself here why I picked the horse in the Distaff before. And here this is partially for fun too. And I want to make a case. There's a few races that you obviously didn't pick yet, and it would be advantageous and strategic, but I just don't have much of opinions in there. I want to make it clear that I do have opinions in the Distaff where not only did I think Regout is a good price at 30-1, but I think Clico is a lesser price, but a better mare or a better filly than even Regout. This is a filly that has to run faster for trainer Brendan Walsh, but I've been watching her. She's been good to me. Once as a chalk singling her, and then last time at Parks in the Cotillion. She's still learning, but she's very good, and she's going to get a good trip here. She loses Irad, but she picks up Pratt. I'm okay with that. A little bit of an odd switch there. I think his Irad goes to does he really? He goes to the Argentinian, right? Is that I think
in the Distaff?
Yeah, he does. It's an odd switch for him to go to Sarawak Rim.
Yeah, Sarawak Rim, right.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of that, but I don't want to read too much in when you have prices and you get a good rider anyway. So Clico to me, bred to go long, bred to get better as time goes on. Hopefully that happens with a big effort in a race where I will not be using Seismic Beauty as much as she is the likeliest winner to most and maybe even to me.
What about Nitrogen? She's getting a lot of talk. I mean, if there's the talking horse, the shishi horse, as our late great friend Bob Newmeyer used to call them, the one they're talking about is Nitrogen. Mark Cassie can't keep his lips closed about her. Everybody else is taking what he's saying and going with it. Is Nitrogen like the pro tem leader of this division that I didn't get the memo about? I'm not. She's been okay. I mean, she's been solid, but I don't think she's been anything spectacular. And in a 3-year-old filly division that's been weak, she got beat by Jinjin on the square last time. I know she drifted a bit in the lane, but she's got to finish. I mean, it was a bad addition of the Spinster when you look at how poorly that Torpedo Anna ran in there. So it's a weak race, and I don't know how that makes her the talking horse in
I
this one.
picked
So
her, but I'm not encouraged. I've kind of kept my ears low and not let. I've learned to not try not to listen to a lot of the buzz because it can impact you whether one way or another. There's two things I like about her. Well, they're both kind of go together. I know it looks like she's been better on the turf if you watch her races, maybe because she's a little quirky when she's finishing races, but she's been faster on the dirt, plain and simple, all metrics, including Thoroughgraph, which is the one I trust the most or use the most. Forget about trust. I haven't, and then the pattern, she just keeps getting better. So this isn't a race where my opinion is strongest because I like her. This is a race where my opinion is built upon me getting Seismic Beauty to not run up to expectations. But I think Nitrogen is coming into the race well. We'll find out how good she is. I think she'll probably either, for some reason, I just don't see her running second by a length. I think she's either going to be better than these fillies, sitting kind of just off the pace and proves that she just keeps getting better at the right time, but the thought that you have that she's just kind of, good, but not great. And now she meets her match.
She's 4-1 in the morning line. I get the feeling she goes less than that. Let's see what happens. Really depends how heavy they want to go in on Seismic Beauty, who's 9-5 in the morning line. If she gets bet down harder, then your 4-1 probably has a better chance of staying there. All right, so where are we in the draft right now? You just went with Clico, so you're back up with your next pick then.
Pick 10 or pick 9? Yeah, my next pick is going to be a race that hasn't been used yet because that's good tactics. And it's a race where, quite frankly, I rarely have a super strong opinion in. And this year, I think there's the horses that are drawn on the inside coming from off the pace in Motorious and Arizona Blaze are going to be tough to beat if they get good trips. But one way to beat them would be to wire out the field. And I don't know if there's a ton of speed in the turf sprint. There's speed, but I think Bring the Band Home is the speed. Now, I think very good chance this horse could just be loved Saratoga this year, and he fired off 2 huge efforts. But he did race against the flow despite giving it up and being outfinished by a Longshot speed at 3-5 or even money in the Nearctic. But if he gets loose on the lead, not only does, win the race, okay, probably not to me, but there's very unlikely for a speed not to hang around for some slice of this. And I think he might be the one that's on the lead.
Yeah, this is a race where I thought the logical horses look kind of logical, right? Motorious AG Bullet, 2nd and 3rd in this race last year. Yeah. She's So Spicy's running pretty well, and she's going to get bet. Arizona Blaze is probably the European that gets bet the most in here. I want to say that Longshot should be racking it up in a Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. And I know we've seen a couple Longshots pop here at Del Mar in this race over the years. In their 3 runnings, I think 2 of the 3 winners were 30-1 or more. But I just can't seem to find the one that I really like in here in terms of at a price. So, for my straight-up handicapping in the Turf Sprint, I'm unfortunately a little straight as an arrow in this one, Scott.
Yeah, me too, which I don't love and probably will keep me from spending too much of my budget on this race outside of maybe a play here for action. But the fact that I feel that way in a turf, when I feel that way in a turf sprint, it usually means there's better races for me to bet on the card because trip makes everything already, to be, if I feel like I have the horse that's going to be loose on the lead or maybe in the pocket off a lively pace and they're in the best form, that's one thing. But otherwise, you need to work out a good trip.
This is kind of like a fun exercise that we're doing, and I didn't do it for any unintended consequence, but just by the way you explain that, I can see some practical context for a handicapper at home, because a lot of people will ask, and we had this in night school a decade ago, and people that you talk to or get into the game are rather new or even experienced players trying to figure out how to budget their days. How do you know which races to play? I always say, bet the most on the race you have the strongest opinion on. And people are like, well, how do I figure out which ones I do? Well, when you go through and you've got one, look at a race, can you find 1 or 2 long shots that you can make a real good case for? If you can, it's probably not one of the races you really want to attack on Breeders' Cup Day, right? I mean, unless you're playing straight numbers of lower priced horses, you can do that on any given day. To play an exacta that's going to pay $26 on Breeders' Cup Day, you've got to beat a bunch of grade 1 horses to get 26 back, even on something that looks logical. Wait for Tuesday somewhere to play exactas that are going to pay $26. So this is kind of like a little fun exercise that we did, but it kind of does, when you and I look at the turf sprint, we kind of look at it and say, well, where's it going to come from? I know this race should be a little bit chaotic, but it sure doesn't look like it. Or maybe that's one of those races where, like on an underneath spot, you want to hit the all and just hope because nothing looks logical. It'll be something illogical that would pop at a number. But a lot of these Breeders' Cup races do have good-looking horses at prices that you can go after. And some of them just seem like the top 5 or 6 choices in the race look like the right ones. So maybe the Turf Sprint is that way. And maybe you see it completely different. And the way you handicap the race out there is you love a horse at a price in the Turf Sprint. That's why you don't listen to us. We try to help you learn from us a little bit, because it's not about just like taking what we say and then going like, oh my God, I got to write this down and go bet this combination. It's about the thought process and trying to get people to think about how they're going to strategize their day. We can all handicap pretty well, right? Any experienced player has been looking at the pages and the past performances and whatever handicapping products they buy and the workouts and race replays and doing the legwork. We're all pretty good handicappers, we think, in this game, but we're all trying to get better with how we play each and every day. And I think that's one of the tactical ways like something like this can even help. So maybe a little fun way in your strategies. Go through the card like Scott and I did and try to find 1 or 2 long shots in every race. And if you can't easily identify one, then maybe it's not a race where you're going to get too deep into the exotics because you don't have the prices in there to get the kind of returns you're going to deserve on a Breeders' Cup day. All right, so after that aside, you've got Bring the Band Home. That's going to bring it up to me next, and I am going to go to the sprint in this race. And there's a horse who I've liked visually. He's a horse from Minnesota through Parks, David Van Winkle, the trainer. His name is Madhouse, and I'm looking forward to Madhouse in this year's Breeders' Cup Sprint as a horse who's got a shot at 30-1 to make some serious noise. I don't know about winning it, but I think on the board, this horse has a big chance. There's some better horses. We both like Imagination on top in this race, Scott. He doesn't qualify in the 8-1 or better category for a long shot. But I like Imagination on top, but Madhouse is the horse who can blow these exotics up for me. Imagination over Madhouse overall. Imagination overall over Madhouse. I can see how the trifectas are formulating here, trying to get this price horse home. Visually, he has been absolutely impressive since arriving at Del Mar. He's caught my eye on the track every time I've seen him on video. His races are better than they look, obviously. He's running against lesser competition in the 3-year-old ranks, but this is a progressive horse where the rest of the sprint division here this year are horses that were big last year, but maybe not as good this year, right? Mulligan hasn't been quite as good this year as he was last year. Straight No Chaser hasn't been quite as good since going this spring overseas since he's come back. So maybe those horses who ran big last year, Ben Tornado notwithstanding, he looks like, after just one start this year, that he may not be going the other direction. But the horses from last year's sprint may be going the other direction. It might be time to take one of these 3-year-olds to pop up into there and get a little piece of it. He's going to be the one for me in here. Madhouse, the choice here in the sprint.
Yeah, you got me convinced. He's the one that, he cost me thousands and thousands the day that I was telling you Cliquot was good to me. If I used him in the the Gallant Bob,
yeah,
I've got a much bigger Breeders' Cup bankroll. So yeah, I already spoke about what I like in here. I think it's I think Ben Tornado and Imagination are both going to run very big. So it's more about finding the horses that can pick up some pieces. And you got me convinced to maybe use him as well.
That might be a little cold try action too. Imagination, Ben Tornado, and then the price, Madhouse. And that might be one to just kind of go in on a cold combination because the exact is not going to be that great. Imagination is going to be a middle price, but Ben Tornado is going to be well backed. The exacta between those two's probably, what do you think? Imagination, Ben Tornado, exacta $36, $40 for two, something like that?
Yeah, or you can just divvy it up and play like a cold exacta with Imagination on top and then play them both for I was thinking of going, what's the numbers? I just want to 10 people that are listening, 10.
Yeah.
So it's 7-10 are the two horses that we like. 7-10 with 7-10 with, and then I was thinking of going 2 and 3, Banishing and Lovesick Blues as my two prices. Now I use the 3 of them. So, press that.
I'm with you on Banishing too. So I was deciding between Banishing as an underneath horse in this spot.
Yeah, me too. So there you go. We've got, we each have our own, and then we've got Banishing kind of as a group one. So yeah, to me, that's how I'm going to attack this race. I'm going to try to beat everybody not mentioned, including Straight No Chaser and Copian.
All right. Look, hey, when you're playing tries and you're not keying the favorite on top, that's a good spot to be in. And you get a non-favorite winner at one price. you've got a chance for, 4 figures on your, minimal investment, 4-figure return in your Breeders' Cup tries. So, Breeders' Cup Sprint, very interesting gambling race for us coming up this weekend. So I've got Madhouse in that one. I get my second pick on the wraparound here. So I believe this is going to be number 12 pick in the draft. So I'm going to go to the Breeders' Cup Turf. You already took one out of the Turf. Or damn it, I did it again. It's this race. It's the Amalok. It's the pick here. Hopefully the people listening on audio don't realize I put the the pick once.
Hopefully we got a lot more audio viewers or listeners this week.
Yeah, exactly. So Amalok's going to be my pick here in the Breeders' Cup Turf. Look, I know the big names in here. I don't expect the Breeders' Cup Turf to be one of those races where it's just absolute chaos. We do have 2 very logical favorites from Europe, but Amalok is the one who's a little progressive to me, a horse who's going to be a better price. I know Mini Hawk's going to be tough in here. I know we've got a big chance, obviously, with a 2-time winner in the race trying to win it for the 3rd time in Rebels Romance, but Amalok's going to be the one I end up taking a shot in here. The only time this horse has been beaten in recent starts was by a horse who's going to be favored for the Melbourne Cup named Al Rifa, and that was at 1 3/4. Rafe Beckett, the trainer of Amalok, somebody who had a win here in the past here in the Breeders' Cup. And the Europeans dominate this division, but not always with the horses we expect on Breeders' Cup Day. So this is kind of like one of those other Euro angles. I'm going to take Amalok here, and I'm actually going to make this horse my top pick in the race because Rebels Romance, Mini Hawk not offering the value, obviously, in this particular spot, and I can't find anybody else I like on the win end. You took Goliath in here at, 8? I ended up taking Amalok at 10. Neither one of us is looking for any big balloons out of the Breeders' Cup Turf.
No, and I'm not looking for any Americans. The only time an American has won, dating back to 2015, is Bricks and Mortar holding off United, who wasn't under American that one year. That was in 2019. Otherwise, all European-based horses. So trying to get cute, probably try to get cute with a European if you're going to do so. Well, the full disclosure and why you keep seeing our picks, it's not as if we didn't draft these horses. We just drafted shortly before we came on.
So. Right, so we can put the graphics together, essentially. So,
exactly. Yeah. I don't want anybody to think this is rigged like, maybe the NBA or other leagues, So now I'm just kidding. I'm going to go to the mile, and I'm going to take Formidable Man. We talked already about this race. It's actually a race Jeremy's a lot higher on than me in terms of both his horses in here and betting it. He has Kirat and Argon as his. I think Formidable Man is definitely one to not overlook just because he isn't a European, and that's because he's 6 for 6 over this course in the mile. And the mile's been more kind to Americans. I mean, they ran 1-2 last year with more than looks over Johannes. And Formidable Man is probably going to be forward in this race. You got Johnny V. We know he's very willing to take it to him on horses in big races that not necessarily look like they're locks to be on the lead on paper. You have the fact that this race isn't going to require a lot of pace unless your horse Curad breaks great and really wants it. And then Velasquez would be more than happy to sit second if that's his plan. I can see him coming away, though, trying to be involved early. And then if he does make the lead, really backing down the field if that is the case. So I just think Formidable Man, a horse for the course, coming into the race in the best form of his career, shouldn't be overlooked.
All right, Scott, let's go ahead and we'll right back and get you up on pick number 13 for you, or 13 overall in the draft. Where are you headed next?
Yeah, you stole my true dirt mile long shot. I'll just admit it again. And hopefully, I know a horse that I have not been a fan of all year, Chancer McPatrick would be my top pick. But I'm going to go with White Abario because, look, this could go very poorly for him, but he's probably going to be a price. We know when he doesn't run his race, it does usually go very poorly for him. But the one thing is I think he's training. I mean, I don't know if he's training well. He's training fast. And look, people like to look at him and say he's only good at Gulfstream, right? Well, he won at Santa Anita back in 2023 in the race called the Breeders' Cup Classic. Maybe he's just not good at Saratoga, or maybe he's just completely done. But either way, he's 10 for 24. He's been taking on equal or better competition than he faces in the Breeders' Cup. Most can't say that. And he should get a good trip under the best rider in the game, or at least in the States right now. So White Abario for me when I really wanted, admittedly, Chancer McPatrick. To you, my friend.
And Chancer, I believe, is your top pick, you said. Is that right? You're going to pick
Yeah,
Chancer McPatrick to win the 3 mile?
Yeah, the way I picked that race, just to be clear, let's just see. I don't want to. Chancer McPatrick, Mystic Dan, 1, 2 would be the two that I would want to bet most in there with pace. Mystic Dan did not fit the profile of this. So take the right of bar. You could take pretty much these last 3 from me as with a grain of salt, other than one, which I tactically saved for last. Because you already picked, you used it with your first pick.
And two, we get some information on some of these price horses too, and we can kind of give you a sense of whether we're hot or cold on them and what scenarios in which they can run well. You know about the favorites in these races, so this gives us a chance to talk about some of the outside contenders in here. Next pickup, I believe, will be 13th in the draft after White Abarrio. I'm going to the final race on the card. This is one of those situations where I think the Filly and Mare Turf has a very low amount of, I'm wording this poorly, has a low amount of front runners in the race. But the 2 that are in there are really strong front runners. You're not supposed to fear just one other horse in the speed duel. So I'm going to go ahead and include Stellify in here as one of my horses that I'm looking for in this particular spot, because Stellify is 30-1 in the morning line. She's done absolutely nothing wrong. She's trained well for this, of what I've seen her on video. And there's only one other horse, the Safi Joseph runner, Be Your Best. And Be Your Best is running and galloping like she is going to run off like a maniac in this race. So I'm a little afraid that they're going to get hooked up in this particular spot and go quick with even just 2 of them. But there's nobody else that I can identify that wants to be up near the pace in there. And I think Stellify is a better mare than Be Your Best, better filly. And so I'm going to go with Stellify as a chance to hold on for a share in what I think is going to be a very formful Filly and Mare Turf. Scott, this Filly and Mare Turf is a strong lineup. I mean, when we talk about the runners in this on the back end, the final race, let's take a look at the field for the Filly and Mare Turf. She feels pretty about as good American in this Filly and Mare Turf division as we've seen in a while. Her running lines are just tremendous. I mean, she never misfires. She ran a big race last time out at Woodbine. Cinderella's Dream is back in here. She was the beaten favorite in this race last year. I heard an interview with Charlie Appleby yesterday in which he sounded like Cinderella's Dream was probably the most confident he was in any horse running in the Breeders' Cup. So those are going to be 2 of the bigger favorites in the race, obviously. And See the Fire on the outside, Ocean Murphy riding there. See the Fire's been taking on Ombudsman and some other big males across Europe. I mean, Ombudsman is one of the top 3 or 4 turf horses in the world, and that's who the running lines with See the Fire keep running into. So she's been in outstanding races. I have a real hard time thinking that 9, 13, and 14, the 3 logicals, aren't coming up with the exacta in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. 2 of those 3 are the exacta. If you're trying to get a long shot in this race, I'm just going to kind of remove some variables. Inside speed with Stellify, and maybe she can hold for 3rd or 4th. But I think if you're playing the exotics in this race and you're using a price, you're probably down in the 3rd, 4th rung before you find one.
Yeah, the funniest thing about it is I totally agree with everything you said, other than my top pick I would throw into the mix, who is Diamond Rain, who I thought ran better or as good as she feels pretty last time out, and might be getting better at the right time. And then even Gazora, who's the 7-2, 2nd or 3rd, first choice on the line.
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't think there's any way in the world Gazora goes favorite in here. I thought David did a decent job on the morning line overall, top to bottom. Really not a lot of qualms throughout the races, but I'll be shocked if Gazora is favored in this particular spot.
I take your word for it. You know, I don't follow it nearly as much. To me, that was clearly based on the fact that I haven't picked that race, nor you. We're both in the same camp. That tells you all you need to know. Both of us expecting it to be formful in the finale.
Yeah, that was the first Filly and Mare Turf horse we mentioned as a potential long shot. And we're all the way down here, 13, 14 picks into it. So that's my one there. I've got another one back up. And boy, if I get these numbers right in here, are we up to 14 or 15? Let's go 14. Stellify's 14. For the 15th pick, I'm going to the classic for Baeza at 10-1 in the morning line. Of course, the Scratch of Sovereignty opens things up, but it also shortens the price on a lot of horses in this particular race. And what we're going to end up seeing here is maybe some undervalue on other horses, but they can't bet them all. And I think Baeza at 10-1 in the readjusted morning line is probably about the right price there. And I think it's a fair number. He is training out of his skin. He looks absolutely fabulous every time I've seen him work or gallop. And I think Baeza's coming up to a huge race for trainer John Sheriffs, who we've seen on Breeders' Cup Day, obviously have plenty of success over the years. Sweet Life with Zenyatta, of course. But I think he's a guy who can get a horse up to a big race. A couple Kentucky Derbies will tell you that as well. John Sheriffs is a guy I think who has Baeza doing as well as he can possibly be doing going into this race. I don't know if he can win it because there's a lot of horses he's got to overcome, but I've had a high feeling for this year's 3-year-old crop. And as for the older horses, this stat I've thrown out a couple times now on some different podcasts, but I think it bears repeating. In the history of the Breeders' Cup, there's only been one 2-time winner. That was Tiz Now back 2000, 2001. But there's only been 3 horses win the Breeders' Cup Classic who ran top 3 the year before. That was Ali Sheba back in 87, and then Tiz Now, and then Mucho Macho Man back, 2012, 2013 in that era. So it hasn't happened very often that you could be good enough to finish at the end of the season, top 3 in the Classic, come back the next year, not be put away to the breeding shed, and come back and be at the top of your game and still perform on Classic Day and run in the top and hit the top again. So I'm going to go against all of the major 4-year-olds back here, and I'm going to take my shot with the 3-year-olds. I'm going to take Journalism on top in the race. I know I'm a bit of a homer, but I think he's got a shot in here as he's finally fresh. He's never had a freshening in his career. He's been off since August in the Pacific Classic, and he's training great. But I think Baeza is going to run a cracker of a race. So I really look for Baeza to run a good one. He's going to be part of the Superfecta, and at 10-1, he's the long shot play, if you will, in a classic that is very strong at the top.
Well, I talked about with Antiquarian with my original pick of the draft how I think I don't feel great about a lot of horses coming into this race set for their best. And Baeza's high on the list of those that I think is. Whether it's good enough is what we'll find out.
All right, so that's Baeza. He's my pick in this one. So we're going to switch it over to you now. You've got 2 back-to-back here to end the draft for you, the final 2 on the wraparound for you.
All right. I have less to say about my filly and mare turf pick because we talked about it all. And I really just looked to a European horse that I thought would come from off the pace because I do think the pace is going to be livelier than maybe you. Well, I know you admitted that the pace very well could be lively. I think both of them are going to, I'm going to play it that both of them are going to break well. And it's going to be very lively there. And it's very, very difficult when they separate an affiliate and a race at Del Mar on 2 turns on the turf to seal the deal on the front end. When the rails are out, maybe. Rails are not out. So I'm going to go with the opposite approach. I thought it looked like a bedtime story coming into this podcast with less information than I had leaving it. Hopefully you guys feel that way too. I always learn about the Europeans with conversations with folks like Jeremy. But bedtime story was just a stab for me there.
All right.
My final pick, though, is more of a little bit of a sentimental pick because she's been good to me. But also one that I think is getting a little highly disrespected in this race at the morning line. And I'm sure I'm not saying David's wrong. I think the public will agree with this. Yeah. 21 on number 10, Praying, who's run 2 crackers, as you said, recently in a row. I mean, yes, it looks as if she's become a new horse. I mean, I like Imagination, and you do too, who's become a new horse off the bench. And this is a filly that it even makes more sense for because this filly was good right away for a trainer that's very patient, former Shug McGahee assistant Robbie Medina. And the last 2 races, are not that far off. The progression was there. She got better last time. She didn't regress, which is a tremendous sign off what was an outlier performance before. So I'll take the Hot Rider and Johnny V with this filly that's been good to me already at 20-1. And while I picked last, and can't say that I think, this is a race that I'm going to go nuts in. I do think she is worth a few bucks here at that price.
All right, I'm going to wrap it up with the final pick in here, and that's going to be a Bucanero Fuerte in the turf sprint. Again, we talked about the turf sprint earlier. I think the race really leans towards the heavier favorites in that particular spot. I'm not looking for any big prices in the turf sprint, but the race does pop with turf sprint prices on occasion, especially at Del Mar, 2 of the 3 at 30-1 or more. So Bucanero Fuerte will be the horse who I wrap things up with here in the draft as far as a long shot goes, but I think that the turf sprint this year is going to be rather formful. That's why I put it at the bottom of the draft. So here's how the draft roster lined up with Scott and I's picks. So when we put them in race order, of course, we picked them in order that we wanted to and made a little fun out of it. But here's the race order. So if you want to follow along with who the long shots we like in each race, Filly and Mare Sprint, the first race on Saturday amongst the Breeders' Cup Championship races. Scott's got Praying. I've got Splendora, 10-2 in the Filly and Mare Sprint. To the Turf Sprint, the 5 Bring Back the Home and the 11 Bucanero Fuerte are the long shots. Turf Sprint, the 5 and the 11. In the Breeders' Cup Sprint, the 3 Lovesick Blues for Scott, the 13 Madhouse for me, 13-3 in the sprint. To the Distaff, Scott Clico, a horse he likes quite a bit in there at 10-1, and Regale the 13, a long shot that we're both kind of liking from off the pace. So 3-13 in the Breeders' Cup Distaff. To the Breeders' Cup Turf we go, where Goliath at 8-1 is Scott's long shot play. The 3 Amalok going to be my play at 10-1, top pick in there, but a reluctant one. I think we're probably just trying to beat some favorites in that particular spot. 2-3 in the Breeders' Cup Turf. To the Classic, it's Scott's top pick in here, Antiquarian, going to be a big price. I've got Baeza as a long shot play underneath, 10-2 in the Breeders' Cup Classic. To the Mile, Scott's got Formidable Man, could be one of those horses up close to the pace at 10-1. I took the 13 Kirat, who I'm hoping is in front of a very slow pace. We're both trying to go forward with some prices there, 8-13 in the Breeders' Cup Mile. In the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, they're pretty heavy favorites in this particular spot. Scott likes Chancer McPatrick, but I outdrafted him and got that one, the 8 at 15-1. White Abario at 10-1. The other one Scott threw in there. So Dirt Mile long shots to consider 8 and 10. And we wrap things up in the Filly and Mare Turf. I've got the 2 Stellify. Scott's got the 11 Bedtime Story. 2-11 in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. Hope you enjoyed the long shot draft. Couple graphic glitches aside, I thought it went pretty well. Some fun. We learned a little bit about it too, about, trying to pick out some long shots in these races and kind of just talking more about the races and talking things out. You kind of get a sense and feel like where these races are chalky and where these races might be open to some bombs.
Yeah, that's the thing. And you talked a lot about it, and it's right. To me, Breeders' Cup is a different animal. You can bet 3-1 shots, and exactas are going to pay 25 most of the year. Sure, if you're very confident in one that you think is going to make your day, and that's your big bet, I'm all good with that. But nickel and diming those generally is not the way I play. There's 2 times I'm going to play. I'm going to play in race when I'm against the favorite or favorites. And then I'm going to play sequences where I have a strong opinion in 1 or 2 of the races, and I'm definitely fading favorites in another. That could mean pick 3s, that could mean pick 4s, and that could mean pick 5s. So excited for it. I really enjoyed this. Good idea. And I would say if anybody has ideas that might make it a little better without knocking us, we're more than happy to see them in the comments.
We have a very kind audience. A lot of weeks they reply thank you in the comments, which
is
really nice to read online. So we certainly appreciate that. But hey, any critique is a good critique. We want to make the show better, and really glad that you've been along with us listening. And I know the audience is bigger here on Breeders' Cup Week, so I'd be remiss if I didn't say Scott and I do this First Call podcast each and every Friday during the racing season year round, and handicap races for Saturday and some Sunday races, but typically Saturday handicapping of stakes races. And then we also have a podcast on Tuesday called It's Official, where I recap hot topics from the weekend and talk about what's going on in the racing game. And then Scott and Bailey Armour do a podcast called Horse Sense every Thursday, a combination of some handicapping and some banter and also some topical conversations there as well. So be sure to check out all those podcasts with First Bet and Express Bet. And again, thanks to those of you who are watching within the confines of the Breeders' Cup Wager Guide. Be sure to check that out from First. Free access on that. Handicappers, not just Scott and I, but 7 different handicappers taking on the 14 Breeders' Cup Championship races there from across the First family. Several of them on track who have been watching the horses all week, like Zoe Cadman, Michelle Yu, Millie Ball. So they're going to give you some on-track insights into that as well. Tom Quigley, he'll be anchored down in Quigley's corner for sure at Del Mar, the little corner of the paddock. He's even got a little plaque there that says Quigley's Corner. Tom will be set. He's got handicapping for us in the Wager Guide as well. So be sure to check all of that out. Labor of love. We enjoy putting those Wager Guides out. Express Bet started the Wager Guide game over 20 years ago. So the first in show, if you will, in doing these Wager Guides. And I've been fortunate enough to be a part of all of them, which means I'm getting very old. Scott, thanks for a great show. I appreciated working with you here today. Good luck to you on the Breeders' Cup, my friend.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I know this is for the connections, for the fun, to me, this is mostly about handicapping horse races and hopefully being right in a couple spots. That's what the Breeders' Cup is to someone like myself. I'm happy for those that partake in the other parts of this game, but let's have a couple of big ones.
All right, everybody. On behalf of everybody with First Bet and Express Bet, have a great Breeders' Cup. We'll talk to you soon.